Okay, you guys, something is very wrong with 50 Cent right now, and nobody in hip-hop wants to say it out loud. The man who built an entire empire on burying his enemies before breakfast just watched Adin Ross walk out with the mother of his own child, and Fifth said nothing. Not a post, not a smirk, not one of those little cartoon captions he loves. Silence. And that silence right there is louder than anything he has ever screamed on Instagram. Y'all, buckle in, because what's happening to 50 Cent this week is not a joke. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why the king troll of hip-hop has finally been out-trolled, outplayed, and outstyled in his own house. Now, if you were online this past week, then you already saw the clip. Adin Ross and Daphne Joy, out in public, doing what a whole lot of people are calling a full-blown date. And the internet did not just react, it detonated. Podcasts, live streams, reaction pages, comment sections, group chats. Everybody stopped what they were doing and looked directly at one man, 50 Cent. Because in any other week of any other year, this would already be over. He would have posted the photo, added a caption so brutal it would trend for 3 days, and moved on to his next target before dinner. But this time, nothing. And that silence is now the story. Take a listen to how one commentator laid it out, because this is where it starts getting real. Yo, bro, she's a pro. Like, I see why she got 50, Diddy, all of them. Almost got me. Like, almost logged into my account and sent her some bread. Now, that same commentator kept going, half joking, half deadly serious, saying he was disappointed in 50 Cent, straight up disappointed. Because he had personally crowned Fifth the king troll of hip-hop, the one guy who would never let something like this slide. And now here he was, getting out-trolled by Adin Ross without a single word coming out of his mouth. Adin Ross. Let that sink in for a second. Not Jay-Z, not T.I., not Diddy. Adin Ross, a streamer. And Curtis has been so quiet that even Adin himself looks confused, like he's waiting for the retaliation that never came. But here's where it flips, because the same commentator dropped a theory that has been buzzing all over the internet for days now. He said the shock isn't really about Daphne Joy, or Adin, or the date, or any of that surface-level stuff. The real shock is who Fifth picked to have a child with. He called Daphne Joy an airhead. His words, not mine. And he said, "You don't have babies with airheads." He said, 50 Cent is considered top 3 smartest men in hip-hop history, and this is who he chose to build a family with. So the more the story spreads, the worse it makes him look, and maybe, just maybe, that's why the man is refusing to say a single word. Now hold that thought, because the next part is where the whole thing turns into a chess match. Another voice in the room jumped in and warned every man watching. Do not, under any circumstance, get involved with what he called a popular girl. He said he's been through it himself. The second she's upset with you, she opens Instagram, drops one line, and 500 guys are in her inbox with money, time, and everything else in between. He said find a woman who wants to be a mother, wants a quiet life, wants to be off the radar. Because the moment a man crowns a woman his wife, his ex-wife, or the mother of his child, he is placing her as a jewel in his life forever, whether he likes it or not. And that kid, that boy, is going to grow up loving both parents no matter what the internet says. So Fifth can talk his talk. He can post his memes. He can go nuclear whenever he wants. But he can't do that without hurting his own son. And that, right there, might be the real reason he has gone completely silent. Let that marinate for a second. Because the 50 Cent we all know, the Fifth from Instagram, the Fifth from the documentaries, the man who publicly went after Diddy in the middle of a federal storm, that guy would have already ended this. He would have posted, joked, roasted, made a cartoon, sold a t-shirt, and moved on. But something is holding him back, and every single person analyzing this situation keeps landing in the same place. It has to be his son, because Fifth loves that little boy, and that little boy loves his mother, and Curtis, for all the noise he makes online, knows the difference between a joke and a wound. Alright, so here is where it escalates. Because the next commentator said something that stopped every single stream in its tracks. He said, if you're a man, do not be with a woman who is impressed by what you have. Be with a woman who is impressed by you. Because a woman impressed by what you have can always be impressed by somebody else with more. And once that happens, she is already halfway out the room. He said the second a man makes a woman his wife, his ex-wife, or the mother of his child, he He crowns her a permanent fixture in his life. Forever. And no matter what noise gets thrown around online, that child grows up loving both sides. That is the entire chessboard 50 Cent is staring at right now. And that is why he's not moving a piece. And here's the wildest part. Everybody in the room agreed. 50 Cent is not weak. He is not scared. He is not confused. He is a Cancer, they said, in the astrological sense, and Cancers play chess. He is sitting there, watching, waiting, calculating. Not silent because he lost. Silent because he is loading. And the theory that keeps coming back is this. The moment Adin Ross catches one scandal, one slip, one wrong headline, Fifth is going to open the trap door and end that boy's entire online career in a single post. That's not a fan theory. That is Curtis Jackson's entire resume. Now, before we go further, I want you to really think about this, because just hours after his birthday, Fifth was already back in the headlines for something else. He officially turned 51 on July 6th, and the moment that candle blew out, the internet went to work revisiting every empire he's ever built. And say what you want about the man, but the numbers do not lie. Globally, 50 Cent has moved the equivalent of over 60 million albums, and that figure is from a report that has not been updated in years, meaning the real number is even higher. His footprint runs way past music, television, streaming, business, a brand that has stayed relevant year after year after year. So the idea that Adin Ross, a live stream personality, is out here dating the mother of his child and he has not blinked, that right there is not weakness. That is discipline. And discipline from a man like this is a warning sign. But not everybody is convinced Fifth is going to strike. And this is where the room split. One commentator brought up a very important point. He said, look at how these two men move online. Adin Ross is online constantly. Every night, streaming for hours, hopping from topic to topic, hitting every platform. Curtis, on the other hand, might post a picture 3 or 4 times a day. That's it. Maybe a meme. Maybe a caption. Maybe a screenshot. Enough to catch a wave, sure. But is it enough to actually beat somebody who literally never logs off? That is the question nobody has an answer for. And then somebody else made an even sharper point. He said, 50 Cent is genuinely cool with Floyd Mayweather. Real cool. And Floyd is famous for picking his battles. So maybe Fifth has finally learned the same lesson. Maybe he is not scared. Maybe he is not stuck. Maybe he has simply decided that going after Adin Ross would only blow Adin up bigger than he already is. And that is a real chess move. Because Adin is already popular. If Fifth shoots at him publicly, that boy gets rocketed straight into a whole new tier of fame. So maybe he is denying Adin the promotion by refusing to acknowledge him at all. That's not silence out of fear. That's silence as a weapon. Now let me hit you with the flip side, because this is where the disappointment really kicks in. Because when the story first broke, a lot of people looked at Daphne Joy and said, going from 50 Cent to Diddy, okay, fine, same circle, same tier, same era. But going from those two all the way down to Adin Ross, that is a completely different conversation. That is a statement. And people online were reading that statement in one specific way, as if it was less about love, less about attraction, and more about who was paying attention. And that read is exactly why Fifth might be sitting back, because the internet is doing the work for him. He does not need to post. The comment section is already writing his diss track for free. Alright, now we have to bring in the man who never misses a chance to talk about Fifth, Rick Ross. Because right in the middle of all this, Ross jumped straight into the conversation, and instead of showing an ounce of sympathy, he used the moment to drag his long-running feud with Curtis right back into the headlines. Asked point-blank whether things between them had improved after all these years, Ross did not blink. He said, no, never been cool. Not since day one. And when the interviewer pushed him and asked why, given they are both heavyweights in the same game, Ross ran down his usual list of complaints. He came for the fashion. He came for the fact that his rival, in his opinion, does not own his masters. He said 50 Cent needed Eminem and Dr. Dre to save his early career, while Ross insists he built his own lane through slip and slide with nobody handing him anything. Then Ross went further. He said he wasn't talking down on Fifth for allegedly living in a 2-bedroom apartment. He just wanted to point it out. He wanted to leave it there in the air. And then he brought up the Diddy documentary, which, say what you want, hit #1 and stayed there for weeks. But Ross argued that Curtis does not actually own the documentary, that he collects a flat check with his name attached, and nothing more. Whether that's accurate or not, Ross said it, and it spread. Because that is what Ross does. He drops a line, walks away, and lets the internet argue about it for a month. Now the two of them have been trading shots for years. Ross has come at his height, his hairline, his relationships, his business deals, his diet, his personal life, everything. And Fifth has fired back with cartoons, memes, and posts so viral they've become their own genre of hip-hop comedy. So when Ross jumped in the second the Adin Ross and Daphne Joy story went viral, nobody was surprised. That is what these two men do. The old rivalry folded right back into the bigger conversation like it never left. And the internet ate it up. But here's where it gets interesting. Because a lot of fans have called Fifth a bully over the years, but the go-to counterexample people keep pointing to is Rick Ross himself. Specifically, a podcast appearance Ross did with Fat Joe, where the topic turned to older rappers being washed up. And instead of keeping it general, Ross jumped straight to naming his old rival. He held up a ring on his hand, reportedly worth around $1 million, and joked about smacking somebody with it. Fat Joe reportedly shut it down instantly and told Ross that's not what the conversation was about, that he was reaching. Ross then pivoted and started describing Uncle Murda by his appearance instead. And the point people keep making is simple. When Fifth responds to something like that, the internet calls it bullying. But when the original comment gets made, nobody blinks. That double standard is a huge part of why the man has built the persona he has. Then, in an older separate clip that resurfaced, Fifth addressed the whole industry attention conversation directly. He argued that some people confuse manufactured hype for real excitement around a release. He said the second the buzz dies, that kind of attention dies with it, unlike his own staying power, which has kept him relevant for over 2 decades. He made it clear that nobody controls him. Nobody tells him when to speak. Nobody tells him when to stay quiet. And when he decides to go after someone publicly, he does it because he enjoys it. That's not new. That's business as usual for Curtis. Which is exactly why his current silence on Adin Ross feels so unusual. During one recent live stream, Ross fired off a series of comments aimed directly at his old rival, including a claim about the mother of one of Fifth's kids and her alleged past. Again, that is Ross's claim in the middle of an ongoing feud, not a verified fact about Daphne Joy. But it spread fast. Blogs picked it up. Podcasts ran with it. Reaction channels dissected every syllable. And the entire hip-hop internet started debating whether Ross had crossed a line or whether it was just more of the same personal back and forth these two have been running for years. In that same stretch, somebody asked Ross a very simple question. Does he actually want problems with people? Ross said no. He said he doesn't go looking for it. But if a problem comes to him, it's no problem at all. And then, in one of the most bizarre pivots of the entire cycle, Ross was asked whether he still mows his own lawn. He confirmed yes, that his neighbors know when the weather is right because they see the tractor come out. A real John Deere. Tinted windows. Radio. Air conditioning. Asked how many acres he covers, he wasn't totally sure. He guessed close to 400. He said he usually brings friends along when he does it, and he brushed off any suggestion that he does it to save money. Which, again, is exactly the type of Rick Ross detail that makes the internet crazy in the middle of a feud that's supposed to be about 50 Cent. But instead of cooling anything down, the back and forth only made it worse. Because after Ross's comments went viral, the reactions came in hot and heavy, and plenty of people were not buying his explanation. One person called the whole thing a PR stunt to distract from underwhelming album numbers, arguing that a real hit doesn't need a headline-grabbing feud attached to it. Another person called it one of the most embarrassing moments of the Baw's entire career, comparing him to other veteran figures known for chasing attention. A well-known hip-hop media personality piled on and said nobody actually cares whether Ross got an advance from his label, and that they had never seen someone try so hard to look like a rich boss in public. And as the reactions kept stacking, one comment in particular went completely viral. Somebody said the whole situation, at this point, is basically an illness. And honestly, that one line summed up how divided the entire internet had gotten. Because at the same time this was going on, another thread popped off. Fans started comparing album numbers. Reports floated around that Drake's Iceman had moved around 80,000 units in his latest tracking week, while early estimates had Ross's upcoming album opening somewhere between 24 and 30,000. And those are numbers that could still shift once the official totals drop. But that gap? Between the album debates, the resurfaced feud, and the viral clips of Adin Ross and Daphne Joy, this headline was showing zero signs of slowing down. Now let's go back to the original story, because there is a pattern hiding in plain sight. Every single time Daphne Joy's name comes back into a headline, the internet turns around and stares at 50 Cent. Every time. It doesn't matter what the actual topic is. It could be a business deal. It could be a photo. It could be a rumor. It could be a diss line in a completely unrelated song. The second Daphne is in the conversation, everybody wants to know one thing. Is Fifth going to say something? And that is not a new dynamic. Fans point back years to when Fabulous name-dropped her in a diss track, and the internet was already watching just as closely then to see if the King troll would respond. But here is the fair question a lot of commentators are now asking. Fifth and Daphne Joy have not been together in over a decade. Like, seriously, over 10 years. So why is there still this unshakable expectation that he has to weigh in every single time her name pops up somewhere? Even now, the internet keeps linking their names together, and every news story restarts the same argument from scratch. And that pattern shows up constantly in celebrity culture. Old relationships get dragged back into the spotlight the moment something goes viral, as if the timeline never moved. That exact debate flared up again the second the Adin and Daphne situation started spreading. One camp said Curtis has no real reason to get involved at all, given how long ago things ended. The other camp said his whole brand is commenting on trending stuff, so people are always going to expect a reaction, no matter how long ago the relationship ended. And, worth pointing out, he has made his own public comments about Daphne Joy in the past. Again, that is his commentary. It is not an established fact about her. But those comments are part of why people expect him to speak now. And still, through all the back and forth, the bigger question kept sitting there in the middle of every stream. Why does the internet keep expecting Fifth to speak on somebody he has not been with in more than a decade? That question honestly became almost as big as the story itself. And it forces a bigger conversation about how much control the internet expects celebrities to have over their exes forever. There is another layer here too, and it is the one nobody wants to slow down and admit. Framing this entire storm as being about Daphne Joy does not actually match the fuller timeline. The tension between Fifth and Diddy was already locked in long before Daphne's name ever entered the picture. Plenty of fans have pointed that out, arguing it is a huge oversimplification to say any of Curtis's later projects or public criticism were only about one person. Separately, reports and testimony connected to the federal case involving Sean Combs sparked online discussion involving Daphne Joy, including debated claims about financial arrangements. Those claims remain part of ongoing public reporting and commentary, not settled fact beyond what has been confirmed by credible outlets or established in court. Meanwhile, Rick Ross kept using every microphone he could find to fire more shots at his old rival instead of showing an ounce of sympathy. He kept the feud going across live streams, interviews, and podcast clips, refusing to let the years-old beef die. Even with all that noise stacking up, a lot of people feel like the bigger point is getting completely lost. Roughly 13 years have passed since Fifth and Daphne Joy were actually together. So plenty of fans are genuinely asking why there is still this permanent expectation for him to react every single time her name trends. At the same time, most people recognize that public disputes involving family can hit the people closest to it the hardest, especially as kids get older and start noticing what is being said about their parents online. And a lot of commentators flagged that as the most unfortunate part of this whole cycle, because at the end of the day, there is a young boy watching all of this play out in real time. Scrolling through the reactions online, plenty of fans echoed the same take. One person put it simply, and I think this line is going to keep circulating for weeks. They said, Fifth cannot control what Daphne does, and it's not like the breakup happened 2 weeks ago. Somebody else called the entire expectation goofy, arguing that even fans who aren't supporters can't figure out why he would suddenly care after all this time. Others pushed back on the original assumption entirely, pointing out that he has made comments before suggesting he genuinely was not concerned with who Daphne Joy spends her time with. And to those fans, that history alone makes it unlikely he flips his stance now. For now, nobody actually knows whether Fifth addresses any of this directly or just lets it pass. All anyone can do is watch the timeline and see if another twist changes the entire conversation. Adin Ross again. Because with a man like Curtis, the story is never really over until he decides it is. And that decision could come tomorrow, next month, or when we all forget about it. That is his signature move. That is why he is 50 Cent. So let me ask you the real question. Was this whole situation blown wildly out of proportion? Or is there still more coming from the G-Unit General? Because personally, I have a feeling the King Troll is not done. I think Fifth is sitting on something, and when he finally opens that vault, the whole internet is going to stop what it's doing and stare. But that's just me. Drop your take in the comments right now. Do you think 50 Cent is playing chess? Or has the King Troll finally been outplayed? Do you think he lets this ride? Or do you think he waits for Adin Ross to trip and then ends everything in one post? Let me know. I read every single comment on this channel. And if you rocked with this breakdown, do me a favor, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new, and share this with somebody who needs to see what is actually happening between 50 Cent, Adin Ross, Daphne Joy, and Rick Ross right now. Because trust me, the next chapter of this story is loading, and you do not want to miss what 50 Cent does next. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.